So I first want to thank you guys for coming, to this presentation. My name is Mariah Pierce. I have been involved with DuPont since 1998. Some of you guys might remember me from working down at the old City Hall, right down the street, 303 Barksdale Avenue. I've been embedded in my head. I was over the finance department and the city clerk. So I have 15 years in financial, municipal government, financial, Anyway, 15 years plus of, municipal finance, finance stuff. So, we've got Dave Bungert.
I moved here in 2002. We have two children that went through K through 12 at Stoughton school districts. They're now young men in college. I got involved with the first one, and that's where I met Lorraine Obermeyer and Jim Hills and Don Dresser and all the old people who said this was wrong. And I've just kind of been trying to provide other options and transparency, requesting transparency so that we can have paramedics. And why don't we have paramedics? That's my big question. Everybody else does, and nobody has an ALS levy. So that's where I'm at.
And then we have Bob Farrell.
My name is Bob Farrell. Our family's been here for 20 years now. And in that 20 years, our family has been heavy users of DuPont emergency medical services.
And real quick, just letting you guys know, we are videotaping it. So just want to give that disclaimer up front. So it will be videotaped. That's an introduction from us. So the first thing that I want to do, and I'm going to apologize because I am going to read a little bit, but basically stating that the City Council approved an ordinance back in July. July 9th, I believe, is when they originally approved the ordinance for Prop 1. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. But it was to put a ballot measure on this November's election. And with that, now it's up to the citizens again. This is the 5th election that has been run on this same issue. The main concern that we have is the citizens have not been reached out to and included. And when I mean that, not just on Facebook. Facebook does not cover all the citizens in DuPont. There's almost 10,000 citizens in DuPont. And the Facebook pages, 1,000 here, 800 there, that does not cover the citizens. So, but with that, everybody, there's lots of citizens that you might know somebody with a life-threatening illness or an allergy, long-term medical needs. You might have an elderly parent. You might have children. I have children myself. And so with that, we have to consider everybody that's going to be using this system, whether it be their financial state or whether it be their medical needs. And so you truly need to look at all that. And you have a right as a citizen too to have an informed vote. And it's important that the vote not be based on emotion. And it's very difficult to do that when you have ads like this, when it says minutes matter. This is a post that was put on by the Yes Committee. It was put up, and I grabbed a screenshot of it, and it was taken down. And the thing that was changed was the ALS priority transports in Madigan, because we do currently have that. So that was why I thought this slide was important. So, but here's what. So basically, why are we suggesting that this is fear-based versus fact-based? Because it is very easy to fall in a place of fear. The what-ifs, the what if this happens, to my mom? What if this happens to my child? The what-ifs. We could live in what-ifs all day long, and it's a very bad place to get. So we wanted to, and I'm not discounting fears. I'm not. So I don't want you guys to think that that's what I'm doing. It's not. The fears are legitimate. But it's important that we can balance them out and understand. And because here's what I'm going to say is, I was at a presentation and it was, what if I go running in the woods and something happens, I don't have my EpiPen. That's a what if. But what if your what if happens, and then my what if happens? And my what if is based on safety and the lack of calls that DuPont currently has, and the lack of calls that our fire department goes on, and the paramedic skills degrading. That's my what if. So if your what if happens, and then my what if happens, what happens then? And so, you know, and so like with that, I'm going to say, you know, innovation, IVs, medication. Those are all areas that can, if not practiced enough and on a regular basis, can have basically life consequences. So you push the wrong medication, you're doing an intubation, all that stuff is safety. And this is not just for me, and I'll go over this in a bit, but the one thing that I want to get at, and so basically, going back to the fear-based versus fact-based, it is estimated that this program in 4 years is going to cost $4.6 million. This is an estimate. And I say that term like this is an estimate. This is no guarantee that this is the maximum amount that this program is going to cost. We have no idea what the future costs are going to be until we're actually in it. We do have a guarantee that the city's #1 revenue source is property taxes. And that is a guarantee. So as this goes on and it becomes a long-term program and inflationary costs go up, it's a guarantee that property taxes will still be the #1 revenue source that will have to fund this program. So here's a lot of misconception too that I want to clear up, because a lot of people basically say, oh, those no people, they're against ALS. That is absolutely not true. I, for #1, am not against ALS. I survived a year of hell. And basically what it was is I basically ran my household while somebody went to the top nation paramedic school. So I understand it. I'm not against ALS. My family's not against ALS. What we are against is basically something that cannot be financially sustained, something that is being sold to the citizens that this is your only option. And that even when you have outside experts that have come in and said the skill levels are going to degrade because the number of calls you have. So that's why we're asking you for a no vote, because we want to, as the yes or as the no committee, we want to pursue this further. We want discussion to happen. I think everybody can agree we're all tired of this levy coming back up and coming back up, but we want a solution, and we want the citizens to basically have all their options, not be pointed in one direction and only one option.
So every DuPont No committee has presented options to the past and the present city council and city staff. This committee has sent a letter in September to the city council proposing 3 options. And then we also gave them a warning, because what has repeatedly happened with the collective bargaining, the collective bargaining is going to expire December 31st, 2019. So we have constantly been getting rid of volunteers, not working with the privates. We must control our collective bargaining to allow other options. That is what has happened in the past. So every DuPont No committee has provided options and has asked for transparency. When this one started, we asked that the 4 committee work together, and we actually, they hosted 2 meetings that allowed everybody to go to. The committee just sent a letter to the city council asking them what is their intentions going forward, because the Department of Revenue thinks our levy is unclear, or shouldn't think. They have stated it is unclear. They're being polite, it's illegal.
Okay, Bob, you are up.
I told you that my family has used a lot of ALS services in their 20 years here. We have a EMS lockbox on our house. not many people have that. We have that one because we need it. My wife has a progressive form of MS. She is a quadriplegic, and her needs are going to go much higher. So I want good emergency medical services in DuPont. I'm not sure this plan is going to get us there because we haven't had the proper debate and the proper comparison of options, and I think that's what we need. I think this plan is bad government, and I want good government. I want us to look at all the options for it and do it, just like the city did for the community center. We can do it for the community center, we should be able to do it for emergency medical services. And that's my biggest beef about this. I never used to be involved in city stuff until Beth Elliott was fired from the Planning Commission, and that got my hackles up, and I've been kind of a jerk about it ever since. But that's why. This is, I think Prop 1 is bad government, and we should have good government, and we should look at all the options.
Okay, so why are we asking you to vote no on Prop 1? Safety issues, due to the lack of emergency level calls. I've stated this earlier previously, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. And not affordable, can we do better? So let me just kind of go off of safety. Lack of patient contacts resulting in skill degradation is a valid concern. Paramedics perform some very invasive procedures. A few years back, the city brought in this basically Fire Chief Jensen, who was the head of the ALS program out in Graham. He ran that. He came in, and it is on city videos. They have it. You can watch it. Where he is basically, he states that one paramedic must receive at least 120 patient contacts per year to maintain their skill level. So 120 per one paramedic. He also states that the average amount of ALS transports for one paramedic in Pierce County is between 150 to 170. So that's just one paramedic. And the reason being, so DuPont Fire Department, per their numbers, and we've used all their numbers, has stated that in 2018 they had 214 ALS transports. If the DuPont Fire Department is asking for 8 paramedics, if you do the math using 8 paramedics, each paramedic would average 27 transports. That's where our concern comes in, is there's not enough. That's just not enough. Per the city's expert concerns, the call volume will not support a high skill level that should be present when in a time of high stress and true emergency, those skills need to be second nature. That just needs, it needs to be like, you know, when you're walking out of a room, I guess you turn off the light. It needs to be the second nature skill that you have. It's not something, and this is where you get into, if you're pushing a medication, you need to know that calculation. You know, yes, you're gonna get guidance from a doc on the phone, but you also need to be able, I mean, if you're pulling it wrong, then, you know, so well, oh well, but different things can happen. And so, the city of Tacoma, I'm gonna use them as an example. They've got an excellent annual report. So anybody can go out on the website and look at City of Tacoma's report, annual reports. And it shows a level of transparency, a level that I have been asking ever since these levies have been coming up. And what I'm talking about is, what type of calls are we responding to? Diabetic, overdose, abdominal pain, psychiatric, respiratory, cardiac, unconsciousness, trauma, what type? But the other interesting fact that the Tacoma annual report shows is how many intubations they do in a year. So you can take the total number of ALS transports that they do, and you can take the total number of intubations that they've done. And over 2017 and 2018, 6% of their ALS calls were intubation. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but let's come back to DuPont numbers. Using DuPont's numbers, 8 paramedics here in DuPont would average less than 2 intubations a year. This isn't enough to meet the state standards, and yes, could they go to a hospital in a controlled environment and do an intubation? Absolutely they could. But they're going to be working in the field. Intubations in the field. I don't know if anybody's ever had a child go in for surgery, but that child has to be intubated. You know, basically they're being put under and everything. It was scary enough for me to have it done in a hospital. I can't imagine knowing that someone has only done it on 2 adults or 3 adults, now is going to intubate my child. I would rather not. Put them in the back of the ambulance, use lights and sirens, and get them to Madigan where definitive care can begin. Things that can happen basically with, you think about an innovation. And there has been some nurses and ER docs talking on Facebook and all that, but with innovation, it's a blade that's going down. You can have teeth knocked out, you can have your trachea damaged, you can have your vocal cords damaged, you can cause internal bleeding, you can get, basically you can have lung complications. There's a whole bunch of different things that go on with that that is important. And that's why we want to make sure that DuPont citizens have the best plan, going forward. So, and not affordable. So one of the things that I want to say that basically the city has not negotiated on the behalf of the citizens. Just like warehouses, the city was not negotiating on behalf of the citizens when the city was wanting to bring warehouses in it. The citizens spoke up, the city ignored them, and nothing, basically the citizens had to raise over $13,000 to fight the city. This is kind of the same situation, is citizens have spoke up 4 other times. City hasn't involved the citizens. But with this, one of the things when I talk about negotiating, there was emails, I have copies of the emails that were sent by the DuPont Fire Department to private ambulance companies a few years back, asking, hey, will you provide service for us? Give us a cost. The one email was sent out Monday morning. Email was sent out Tuesday morning saying, hey, do you have those numbers for me? But in the email it said, DuPont needs 2 rigs 24/7. No, you cannot stay in a city building. No, you cannot park in a residential area. And no, you cannot park in an apartment complex. Yet, I want your company to provide me 2 ambulances 24/7 for DuPont only. So when we're talking about negotiating on behalf of the citizens, that's not true negotiation. That is more of a one-way street. I just recently reached out to privates. I've got an email confirming, yes, would they be willing to talk about maybe having a base station in DuPont with no contract? Would that mean that there's no additional taxes needed from the citizens? Possibly. But the fact is that nobody from the city has reached out to start that negotiation, to really protect the citizens. So, any DuPont resident in the of life-saving emergency will be accepted at Madigan. So a lot of people don't know this, but you do not have to be a military resident to be accepted in Madigan. So when you're in this field, the terminology is sick. If you are a sick patient, truly sick, you need advanced life support, true advanced life support stuff, Madigan will take you. Our EMTs can put you in the back of an ambulance, and they can do that rapid transport, that slide that I used earlier. They can do that rapid transport to Madigan. Madigan will stabilize you. Madigan will then, after you're stabilized, have you transported to another hospital. So that is how that works. And per the Pierce County protocols, EMS protocols, it is allowed. So if a paramedic unit is out farther than what it would take the time to get to Madigan, we're allowed to do that. And I think that's something that people need to know. If this levy fails, you will still have that. We're still going to have the fire department. We're still going to have the EMTs that can do that. So that is that. Getting to the basic life support and ALS services. This is where we kind of go into, basic life support is basic life support things. Advanced life services are invasive procedures, like I said. Innovations, IVs, medications, basically sticking a needle in somebody's heart and pulling fluid off of it. It happens. That's what happens in the field. So it can happen. I know that. And babies that need to be intubated. That's a touchy situation, and that's a very skilled thing, but it happens. And I'm going to go there, and I probably shouldn't, but even with paramedics, I'm getting a head shake, like no. Things happen. So, but where I'm going is basically do we have enough calls that justifies this? And presently, we don't know because the way the records are kept. And this is not a personal attack. I don't want anybody to think this is a personal attack. But last night there was a post put on Facebook, and numbers were used. And in this post, it said EMS responses were 621 calls. It then goes down to BLS calls, and it says there was 231. So EMS calls, emergency medical services calls. It then goes down to 231 BLS calls. Then the next thing is ALS calls, and it says 311. So the way that everything has been broken out is DuPont is using an actual number for DuPont transportation, and for paramedic services, they're using a percentage of how many times paramedics were available. So it kind of skews things a little bit because you're looking at a number versus a percent when you're trying to compare things. So I took the 15% times the ALS calls that we got, because we got 311 ALS calls in 2018. That's what's being stated. 15% of that was 47 patients that were transported. And why am I making a big deal about this? Because the way the records are stated. You had 311 ALS patients. DuPont transported 214 ALS patients. We have 47 patients that were transported by private paramedics or other paramedics. We have 50 patients that are missing. And if you're truly an ALS patient, you don't just miraculously all of a sudden get better. So when I'm talking about things just don't make sense. And so I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but we're missing all the data. And so.
Am I allowed to ask a question? Or at the questions at the end?
At the questions at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, she's gonna get you.
Okay.
Okay. An ad that's been used is have they reached record numbers? This has been an ad that has been used. Calls for service have reached record numbers. Approving Prop 1 will ensure paramedics are available to you and your family. 365 days, 24 hours, 7 days a week, even during multiple EMS calls. What people don't know is back in July of 2018, the city of DuPont voluntarily basically decided to notify South Sound 911, who's our dispatch center, that we would be like a primary response team on I-5. The interesting thing is you could argue that right beside DuPont, you could argue that that's our ethical duty. That's, you know, we weren't doing that before that. If we were needed on I-5, we could go and help out. But we weren't the primary. JBLM was the primary. But what's interesting is we have calls all the way up to Camp Murray that we're dispatched to. And here is the concern, is because when you're responding, and we also have calls all the way down here that we've had, down to Nisqually. But what we have right now is when you're responding on I-5, you need the engine and you need the APAR. That's how they go out. It's a safety thing. So when they're out on I-5, DuPont citizens have no coverage. You have no emergency medical services. You have no fire coverage because they're not on the freeway. So until they get back, we're not covered. So once again, is it an ethical thing that the city should be helping out our neighbors? Absolutely. But should we be doing it at the cost of us when it was already really being handled by a larger agency that was doing it? And so that's where, you know, I do have a problem with that. I don't know if anybody else does, but here's where I do want to show. Once again, I've stated that we've used the city's numbers. I don't want any, I've heard that I'm providing inaccurate information. My numbers are false, or I've been accused of that. But in May of 2008, there's no I-5 here. These reports have been for years. You can go back and you can look in the council packets and things like that. So this isn't just something new that they were doing. In July of 2018, I-5, 1 month, 14 calls on I-5. By the end of December, we had 52 calls on I-5 and 22 mutual aid calls. So we have increased voluntarily our call numbers. And so that's another thing when we say we've reached record number highs. Well, if you do stuff to push you in that direction, of course you're gonna reach those record number highs. So, with that, okay, so, some folks that don't know the original plans for the emergency services in DuPont homes, except for Historic Village, were mandated to have sprinklers in them. There was a purpose for that. DuPont, way back when, even back in, I want to say Steve Young time frame, there was contracting. You know, there was always the talk about contracting services, contracting with Lakewood, all that different things. But while Hoffman Hill was being developed, the hearings examiner basically mandated a house be built up there for a satellite station. DuPont basically didn't utilize it, rented it out. During the last levy, I spoke up and said, hey, because it's a known thing that firefighters don't want private paramedic companies using their same facilities. That's just the way it is. And so I spoke up and said, contract with a private, negotiate something, stick them up there. Coincidentally, the city surplused the house, and it no longer belongs to the city. So, once again, is the city working in the direction to get, you know, this problem solved? I personally don't believe so. I think we're doing everything to lead us to one direction. So what do we currently have? We've got 13 firefighters right now, all trained in BLS, and we have 2 medical transport cars. Options that we talk about is Spout, because, you know, they're paramedics, but what's the problem with this? They're not contracted currently. And because the way Pierce County is, there's kind of been a push to get privates out. So if you're not using them and you're a business person, you're not going to be staffing things necessarily where they need to be staffed. And so that's a problem. Can it be fixed? It could be. Once again, maybe reaching out. You know, AMR is looking to expand in Pierce County and Thurston County. So can those things be fixed? Absolutely. And it's nothing against our firefighters. It's with that kind of stuff, if you have different options, you could negotiate to have those folks rotated in and out of DuPont. So then you're not worried about that patient contact, because they're getting their patient contact somewhere else. And then they're coming to DuPont, and you know that they've got skills. So what's being proposed on Prop 1 for the first year? This is out of their data. It's basically a little bit over $1 million. This is the first year's expense. It's not everything, but so here, they've done a 3.5% increase each year for 4 years. The ballot measure is basically stating that the city is going to add 4% property taxes every year after 2020. This levy will be up for revote. It'll have to come back up to the citizens in 2023 because there's no way the city can fund this going forward after that. It's $1 million program that is only going to increase. And so what I did is I went back, once again, using city numbers. I pulled history, basically over the years. I got this from city budget documents. History from what 2013 through 2017 were. My 2018 numbers actually came from the state auditor's website because there's no document that has that. So I used what the city reported to the state auditor's site. The average annual increase for the fire department has been 6.75%. Why is this important? Because in the presentation and in the estimated cost of their fire program, they only increased at 3.5%. So you're missing 3.25% somewhere in there. Anyway, so you're missing that. But in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, that fire department budget is going to double. So once again, remember your property taxes.
Can you just point, because it's hard to see from back here, can you just point to where we are? Where's 2019?
So 2019 is right here. And this is a budgeted number. So there is no actuals. The city does not provide, the city used to provide department actuals monthly. The city doesn't provide that anymore. So there's no way to know, unless you do a public records request, how the departments are spending their money and then basically projecting out. So that doesn't exist. It's not out there, you know, just to grab off the website. So this is where we would go the first in 2020, and then just using that inflationary factor. is that's what the department's budget would be, almost $4.5 million by 2024. So that's where we talk about sustainability and long-term. So I'm gonna let Dave speak to this one. This is what we'd like to see from
So
the city
really
council.
quick, there are other options and we would like to explore them and we'd like all citizens to be involved. A quick survey in your water bill would be a really cheap way to do this. Okay, next one. These are just some things that in the past that did we need 2 new fire engines? The one fire engine is now a frontline fire engine in another fire district, doing more calls than DuPont did. The cost for the new community center feasibility study, $150,000, and we don't have any research into an ALS program that any expert is supporting. Next
Okay,
slide.
next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so real quick, I added this one. So basically, do you know what your tax rate will be starting in 2020? I was the citizen that reached out to Department of Revenue, because it did, the ballot measure does not follow the RCW. Like I stated before, July 9th, the city adopted an ordinance that had the ballot measure. July 30th, the city came back and had to make a correction to the ballot measure because it was not written correctly. They only adjusted the levied lid lift percentage. That's what they put in there. They did not address the maximum rate that the levied lid lift should state in there. Some would say this is not a big deal, but it is. It should be on the ballot measure. If you look at any ballot measures out there, you can see it. Even DuPont's past ballot measures. EMS, we do EMS levies every 6 years. They write it correctly. Why did we specifically leave out the $1.78 on this ballot measure? And this, it is unclear to the department what the levy rate the voters are being asked to approve for the 2020 tax year. That's an email that I have. I'm not going to disclose the name because the city has a habit of going after people. So,
So in summary, the Department of Revenue has stated that it is unclear, the voters don't know what they're voting on. What you're voting on is a 64% tax increase on all your property tax, DuPont property tax. That doesn't include your EMS levy, it doesn't include your school district tax. A 64% tax increase. Okay, next one. So, ClearGov is a website you can go to and you can get all kinds of data. The thing is, it's usually 2 years behind. So this is 2017 data. These are some of the things we're doing good at. Public Works and government. It's hard to see it, but right here, it's it breaks the cost down and then lower, 40% lower than similar towns, 18% lower than similar towns. So we're doing good in some areas. Next. Some areas we're not doing so good. Economic environment, we're 13% lower than similar towns. And then culture and recreation, we're 28% lower than other similar towns. Now for our emergency medical services, we're already 15% higher than similar towns. We're already 15% higher. We are 15% higher than Fife, Steilacoom, Furcrest, and that chart she showed you, we're going to go 4 more million. Next slide.
okay. So if approved, right now we're looking at a 64% increase. If the base rate that the city decided to use was the 2019 base rate of your property taxes, it would be a 58.9% increase. The city has received a preliminary property tax rate for next year, so it's a 64% increase if they go with 2020. It just depends which one the city decides to go with when they finalize their numbers in December. So, but once again, what's the cost going to be in 4 years? We don't know.
We don't even know the cost in the first year.
We're 30% over our allotted time. I don't think we ought to.
Yeah.
Got a good guess. And
Yeah.
Okay.
We said enough
Yep.
already.
No, that is, so we will go go ahead and wrap up, but basically, I just want to point this one out. This is how property taxes work. Even though the rate goes down, it doesn't mean your property tax payment goes down. So you can see the rate goes down, it goes back up, goes down, it goes down again, I didn't have that there, but my property tax right here is what I'm paying. This is a Louviers Avenue home. It's gonna go up 64% in 2020. And so your property tax, and all I'm trying to say is your property tax rate is never going to go back down to here. You're gonna have a new level of property taxes. So, anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for coming. If you've got any questions and stuff, I'd be more than happy, and I'm sure Dave would be more than happy. But
There's another meeting that starts.
Does the other group here,
I think so.
leaders are here, do they want to hear anymore?
oh, okay. Are you fine?
Yes,
Okay, well, thank you.
It's their meeting. I just make sure it happens every month. So if they
Okay.
have questions they want to ask, I'm good with it.
Okay.
So
So
next slide.
we'll do the next slide. We're almost done. We're almost
She
done.
likes to talk.
Okay, we can use a great historical example in Vashon Island. So Vashon Island has a population about 1,000 more than DuPont, but it's much older. Remember one time DuPont was the youngest city in Washington? Well, Vashon Island was never that. Much older, they have much more EMS calls because of their older population. And in 2013, the city council said, we do not have enough calls for our paramedics to maintain their skills, and we're spending too much time on overtime. So what can we do? And King County has something called Medic One. King County said, we will transition your paramedics into King County's paramedics. And they did that over a 3-year period. But the Vashon Island can't have enough calls to maintain skills, and they're paying too much in overtime. We might fall into that same trap if we go with this plan, the Providence plan.
So the question is does DuPont have the volume of calls and the type of calls to keep their skill set at an appropriate, competent level? As I stated before, with using the 2018 numbers that DuPont has, we're looking at roughly 27 transports per paramedic. If you want to take that 6% into the intubation area, that's less than 2 intubations a year per paramedic. They want 8 paramedics. It's just, too many paramedics, not enough calls, could be dangerous. And this is what I'm gonna say. Chief Jensen, an industry expert, like I said, he ran the ALS program, spoke. Statistically, there's a real threat that's involved, which we didn't talk about. A medic has to have between 100 and 150 transports per year to be out of the danger zone of creating major medical mistakes. And what we're talking about here is potentially newer medics working in a system with very few transports. So they're not going to be reaching the 150 transports, and that would become a significant liability. Not only is it a liability, it's truly more dangerous than safer to the DuPont residents.
Is he saying that in DuPont or is he saying that somewhere else?
That's at the city council here in DuPont.
That was here in
That-
DuPont, he made that
that's-
statement?
That was here in DuPont.
Well, yeah, well, that was a task force that they had in 2017.
So on that, in the history of all this now 5th levy, there have been 2 task forces, there have been 2 independent studies, and then there was they hired Citygate. And all of those findings, their recommendation to the past and present councils was that DuPont must contract for medical transport. So the experts have always said that DuPont is too small, we have low volume of calls, and they need to contract. And that is what Fife is doing, that is what Steilacoom is doing, and that is what Furcrest is doing. And their budgets are less than ours. We have of the 4, we have the highest EMS levy, and we don't have ALS. So we're not listening to the experts. And there hasn't been one expert that got up and spoke at the public hearing for this ballot measure. There's not been one expert, as like Chief Jensen somebody in a white shirt from the fire department. Neither one of our 2 fire chiefs have taken a position on this. So that's questionable. So, go ahead.
Well, and I think it's important when we say that too, because I think it's important that you have somebody, when you're talking about industry experts, that have experience with the paramedic skills, that know that, you know, that have either done it themselves for a while and now oversee it. And, you know, and so I think that's an important thing that when we talk about industry experts.
Okay.
So anyway, but that's where we're at. You know, we are asking for a no vote. We are asking, and the reason being is because if this is passed, the way that this ballot measure was written in the ordinance, the city will have no options. It is stated that this money must be used for a DuPont Fire Department paramedic program. So that takes out all options for contracting. That, whether it be contracting with West Pierce, Central Pierce, Tacoma, other fire agencies, we will not be allowed to do that. And so we're asking that you vote no. We're asking that you basically get involved with us when we go to the city, if we have that ability, if it fails, to basically review all of our options. And then bring forth something that's permanent and that we can all be happy with, and it's a win-win for everybody.
So in closing, small towns, we have a hard time with overtime. We have a hard time with covering other things. Sometimes we have to suddenly just throw money at the problem. I've been going to other fire departments, fire districts, and talking to chiefs. I've actually, over the past 4 levies, I've met a lot of people. So I met with a chief, and they pointed something out. This isn't his department, but he wanted the citizens to realize this, because this is something that DuPont cannot afford. So, from 2010 to 2017, there has been, in this 13% increase in population, DuPont's even larger than that, and 27% increase in volume. This is their department. But what's really important is, in firefighter injuries, there has been a 200% increase. We have the firefighter, he's injured right now, that's his presentation. We had to hire somebody to cover his shift, okay? We can't have 6, 8 paramedics and have 2 injured, short-term or long-term. And then the other thing is, you have military leave, you have family medical leave, you have sick calls. We cannot sustain just the leave program and injuries. And this is coming from the chief, and he wanted me to make sure that we understood this, because we can't afford that. Thank you.
With that being said,
I think
okay,
so.
we have a question?
I think this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question is, are you saying that if we contracted with a private ambulatory company and they would need a place to stay here, that's why we don't have them right now, is because they don't have a place to stay?
Depending on the
Okay.
way the contract was negotiated,
But did you say that we used to have a place for them to stay?
yes,
And what happened?
and the city sold it.
Why?
So,
Why did the city sell it?
So there's a couple reasons. One of the reasons the city said is it was going to, just like our community center, it was going to take a lot of money to maintain. They wanted to use the money to paint the civic center and do other things. As I said about collective bargaining, with our union contracts, our labor contracts, if we're continually pushing away the volunteers, the reserves, if we're pushing away the privates, then we get closer and closer to a cliff where we have to go with that. So by getting rid of that, it puts the cost for a private, because now they have to rent a place or buy a place, it puts their costs higher. That's
Okay, so I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question is if you guys have talked to some people, is it possible to buy a house in DuPont for them to stay at and contract with them for less than the, whatever,
Why
$4.6
can't they park
million?
in a parking lot like they do in any other
Yes,
city?
all those are possible.
It is possible to do it for less money.
So, but your city has to do that.
Right, the
So
city
they
has
can't
to do it,
park
but you're saying
in our
that
city?
Yeah, they-
Your
your,
city code, yeah.
so your research has shown you though
It's a
that it
public
could be
street.
less
It's a
money.
public
Yeah,
street.
oh yeah, yes. So, but, so I'd just like to tell you guys a couple things. So, I was in the Navy, and many of you know about the Marine Corps, right? Every Marine is a rifleman, okay? So in the Navy, every Navy personnel is a firefighter, because on a ship, the fire kills more than anything else. So my entire Navy career, I was on extensive fire training. I then became a DRT team member and a team leader. I was deployed in Firestorm when Malibu was on fire, when the state fire marshal had to pull everybody in to protect Pepperdine College. I was deployed in Northridge when Northridge earthquake hit. I was deployed in the Rodney King riots. We were out there with machine guns protecting firefighters and suppressing fires. What I want to tell you is, in about 1968, the Southern California fire chiefs were like, what's going on? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. What they did is they adopted the Navy Plan for Firefighting, and that became IC, Incident Command, and then it became ICC. And now in 2004, Homeland Security has adopted NIMS, NIMHS. All right, I retired in 2005. My entire Navy career, I was doing this. I was involved in it. And this is what I want to tell you. Because everybody at these meetings asks, what if? What if? So here's what I'm going to ask you. In the first levy, what happened to everybody's what ifs? Nothing happened.
What was that? What was the question?
When the first levy failed, what happened? Nobody's what ifs came to reality. What happened when the second levy failed? Nothing, no what ifs came to reality. What happened when the third levy failed? No what ifs happened. What happens when this one fails? Nothing will happen. What happened last week to your what ifs? Nothing happened. Okay? What happens is, I'm going to give you some situations. I-5 gets closed every week. Last week in Nisqually, a road got closed. Okay? IC was adopted, and the Amtrak train, right? DuPont may have been first, but when they get there, it's beyond their control. The IC, now NIMS, even elevates that right away. Okay? They triage it, they take care of it, they hold on to it, and then they respond accordingly. That's what everybody does. It's this big program. DuPont is not gonna, we're not gonna have a bunch of what ifs tomorrow or the next day, okay? When we had the fire here, right before the July 4th, what happened? DuPont responded, it was beyond their control, they called the DNR, okay? The what ifs have not happened last week, they didn't happen last month, they're not gonna happen tomorrow. Things do happen, we have acts of God, but plans are in place for that. Fire Chief Jensen, he told that task force that. It's on video, because DuPont was planning for all these what ifs. What if this happened? And he goes, that's not your job. And Lee Chase was there. And he sat right across from Lee Chase, and he says, DuPont Fire, your job is not to plan for the what if. Your job is to plan for minor structure fires, motor vehicles, and light illness. And he said, Lee Chase and I, we do that. There's other people in the pyramid that worry about the what if. Okay? I just want to let you know that nothing bad is going to happen tomorrow. Nothing bad happened last week. There's no what ifs. If this levy fails, there's not going to be this doom and gloom. Nothing's gonna change in your fire department presently. Nothing is gonna change. I just want everybody to understand that. Do you have any questions on that topic?
I
Okay.
want to just respond to your, about whoever said about parking somewhere. This is the email. Can you work up what it would cost to place a car not in a city building, and based off the resident code, the car could not be in an apartment or housing development? This car would be for DuPont only and would have an estimated 200 transports a year. They have to reach all calls within 5 minutes or less. They have to have 2 units available. And they have to do a 1, 2, 3, they have to do a 5-year projection. The city, in its ALS task force documents and in the presentations when the department was going out with the mayor and talking to the different community connector groups, stated that the privates mandated a 5% increase. It's documented, it's in writing. Looking at the email says, we've included, because we haven't had enough time to do due diligence on a price thing, because basically the city asked for it one day and wanted the price the next day, which is not how you do bids when doing something. The one company responded with, we'll basically throw in a 3% inflationary factor. The other company basically gave a spreadsheet. When you do the math, it's a 3% inflationary factor. The city lied to the citizens the last go around. 5% is much different than 3%. Just like the ballot measure does not have the amount in it. It wasn't a mistake. It was left off on purpose. Any other questions?
She had a question.
Answered.
Okay.
On that email, just so you understand, what she's trying to point out is there are specifications for a bid, just like when you get, we're gonna get a deck or whatever, and we want Brazilian teak wood, or you want the PVC, you have specifications, and then that raises costs or controls costs. So the city's specifications for that contract were, they had raised the specifications, so it was near impossible. So that's why the responses were crazy. Now, you put in a basic bid, an RFP, right?
RFP.
And you go out to the companies and even the public fire departments, and you ask them and you get a bid. And then there's a process on how that works. So that's one of the options that we have requested the city council to do. Go out there and get a bid. Do it the right, the legal way, and the transparent way. So.
And you guys don't think that the city council has done that they haven't
I
looked
did a
in-
public records request asking for any RFPs, and it was responded that the city has not done an RFP for ambulance services.
You can also go on the website and check.
You can go through
You can go through,
records.
because they're doing bids all the time.
Okay.
They're doing
So,
bids for
there's
painting, they're
nothing
doing
out
bids
there.
all the time, and it's an open and transparent. But as she was saying, that was a quick email, it wasn't a bid process,
Right.
so.
And so, any other questions? So just reiterating, we support ALS. We have major concerns, safety being the one, financial stability or sustainability being the other. We do believe that there's other options out there, and we want the city to do what's right for the citizens, all the way around. So, thank you.
Okay, quick question. So I know it was determined that when the ballot measure was put out there, they had the incorrect RCW. They didn't put in the correct tax rate, the dollar amount of what it was truly going to cost. Thereby, basically, they violated RCW law. So knowing that that is the case, if this does pass, is that legal? I guess I'm really confused on if it is legal or not, and it gets passed, are we gonna be having litigation against the city from people saying you just passed an illegal ballot adopted measure. I'm confused.
So the citizens would have to take up legal action.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I do not think that the city would do the right thing and not collect it. So,
Because I know they were asked at the city council
Yeah,
meeting
they were
to
asked.
withdraw
yep.
and start fresh, basically, and come together to work. And was there ever a response?
No, I haven't heard a response back.
Okay.
All I've received on the emails that the No Committee has sent to the council is that we received a couple emails as thank you received. It's a correspondence chain, that's all. But to answer your question, what is going on right now with the Sound Transit ST3. ST3 is in litigation. And the citizens are upset, and now they've come back with a referendum. So there is action. This is illegal, and the unfortunate thing is it's not a, somebody can't just sue the city for money. This is a legislative lawsuit. So it would be right or wrong, and then if they've taken the tax, they'll have to give it back depending on the ruling. There's a couple others that have gone to the state Supreme Court. Some have been upheld and some have been overturned. So it's a long, drawn-out process, and we, the taxpayers, would end up paying DuPont's legal bills because they're going to fight. That's just, I can personally say they're going to fight on everything. I've learned that, and I've won on them all. So there will be legal action. That's the unfortunate reality. And then there's more money that's not going to Parks and Rec or whatever, and there'd be more money that's who knows where it's going. And outside counsel is not cheap.
Any other questions? I'd like to thank the church for allowing us this time. I appreciate it, and also the community connectors that agreed to let us continue on since there was not anybody here, I guess, for that meeting. So thank you guys. Please feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions or concerns or things. You know.
Or want a no sign.
Want a no sign, yes. So, I appreciate your time this evening. So.
And I think my only ask is just making it aware that the vote no is not against ALS. We want ALS. But where I know that the city has been given multiple different options and just has, nope, this is the only one we're going to do. Well, here's option B, C, D. Take it to the citizens. They just seem to say no, 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 and they're not giving the citizens their voice. I think that's where I get frustrated is, yes, we want ALS, but I don't shop at Neiman Marcus, but I can get just a nice shirt at Macy's. We're gonna have better, and from what I'm understanding, we would have better health care, ALS, BLS services because they're gonna be experienced if, for example, we were to contract out. I want someone experienced if I'm gonna be having, like she was saying, if you have to be intubated and you haven't done it for 6 months, I don't want my esophagus or throat ripped open.
So on that, there's many options. And the number one option that the No Committee has for years presented to the City of DuPont, past and present councils and city staff, is that we have an EMS levy, use the EMS levy to staff the ambulance. We're the only city or town in Pierce County that uses the EMS levy funds to staff the fire engine. And where that came from, it was actually a good move. It's when the economy collapsed, they contracted and they put a paramedic on the fire engine. And then the ambulance came from West Pierce. It was a contract, and we had ALS. That was 2007 up to 2009. That was the recession, the mortgage debacle. All right, so it was actually, my hat's off to them. They actually did good. In the worst economic times, DuPont had ALS. They contracted for service, and they used the EMS levy funds to staff the ambulance. The ambulance came from West Pierce. However, as the economy has gotten good, they've never reallocated those funds to staff the ambulance. So, this is another option that we have presented, is that as the department has grown, they have hired 4 firefighter EMTs. Why not hire firefighter paramedics? It's managing your resources. I hate to say it, but human resources, HR, in every company, in every business, that's what it is. They manage people. They manage professions, they manage jobs. So we don't need a big tax cut or tax increase. We just need to manage what we have. There are so many other options. However, since that recession, we've been doing it this way. So, but if you look at Silicon, if you look at Fife, if you look at Furcrest, comparable towns, they all use the EMS levy to finance their ALS program. And their ALS is less than ours. Excuse me, their EMS levy is less than ours. So, and what this comes down to, if you guys came from a big family like I did, every night at dinner I looked to my brother if he got more ice cream than I did, right? You want to be equal and equitable, right? That's what it is. Why can't we have ALS? We have the money, we're paying for it. It's just not being allocated as everybody else is allocating it. I hope that answers your question. That's been presented the past 3 levies.
Okay. Well, thank you guys, and